Commander Gorin, a towering reptilian officer clad in the Empire's midnight black armor, led his squad through the station's dimly lit corridors. Their heavy boots echoed against the metal walls, the air thick with the scent of decay. Gorin's eyes, sharp and calculating, swept the area. The station seemed devoid of life, its once bustling halls reduced to silence. Yet as they approached the control room, a faint sound broke through, the steady, rhythmic breathing of a single figure. Slumped against the wall, hands bound and head bowed, was a human. His uniform, battered and blood-stained, suggested a soldier, though not one of note. Gorin's lip curled in disdain. A survivor? Or bait, he hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. Humans were rarely encountered in Imperial territories, and when they were, it usually spelled trouble. Still, the man appeared unarmed, defenseless. Gorin signaled his squad forward. The human's head lifted slowly, revealing a face as cold and unreadable as stone. His shaved head and piercing gaze gave him an almost inhuman air, a predator's stillness disguised in a soldier's form. "Help me," he rasped, voice hoarse, as if it took great effort to speak. Gorin stared at him, unmoved, but gestured for one of his soldiers to scan him for weapons or threats. The scanner beeped green, nothing. Just a lone, broken man. "Secure him," Gorin ordered, stepping back as the soldiers moved to comply. The human offered no resistance as they cuffed his wrists with glowing restraints, his expression unreadable. The commander regarded him for a moment longer, searching for something, weakness, fear, perhaps a hint of deception. Finding none, he turned away. As the soldiers dragged the human toward the ship, Gorin muttered to himself, "Let's see what the Overlord makes of you." Agent 47, the galaxy's most feared assassin, allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile as the cold cuffs bit into his wrists. The first phase of his plan had gone exactly as intended. To the Empire, he appeared to be just another human casualty of war, a lost soldier begging for mercy. But mercy was not something he sought. What he sought lay deep within the heart of the Empire, protected by walls of steel and legions of loyal guards. Overlord Rauter, the supreme leader of the Galactic Empire, was his target, and now the assassin was on his way to meet him. The cruiser's journey to Vorthen Prime, the Empire's capital, was uneventful. 47 spent the hours in his cell, silently observing his captors. The guards were overconfident, their arrogance bred from years of serving a regime that considered itself invincible. They spoke openly, assuming the human couldn't understand their guttural language. But 47's training encompassed far more than combat. Languages, alien customs, and psychological manipulation were all tools in his arsenal. He listened carefully, piecing together their routines, their weaknesses. When the ship finally docked, 47 was marched through the imposing halls of Vorthen Prime, his captors eager to parade their new prisoner. The capital was a marvel of alien engineering, a sprawling city encased in a domed megastructure, its skies filled with the hum of hovering transports. Towering spires pierced the artificial atmosphere, their surfaces glowing with energy drawn from the Empire's enslaved star systems. 47 kept his gaze lowered, feigning the demeanor of a defeated man. Inside, he was calculating, counting guards, noting escape routes, memorizing the layout. His neural implant, hidden deep within his skull, recorded every detail. This was enemy territory, the heart of the beast, and every second mattered. The procession halted before an immense set of doors, each adorned with intricate carvings that depicted the Empire's conquests. Beyond them lay the Imperial Detention Center, a fortress within a fortress. As the doors groaned open, 47 was shoved inside, his footsteps echoing against the cold, metallic floor. Rows of cells lined the walls, each housing prisoners of varying species, their eyes dull with despair. The guard shoved him into an empty cell and activated the energy barrier. They left without a word, the hum of the barrier a constant reminder of his captivity. Alone at last, 47 allowed himself a moment to assess his surroundings. The cell was sparse, a cot, a sink, a toilet. But the real advantage lay beyond the energy barrier. The guards were complacent, their patrols predictable. The detention center's security relied too heavily on its advanced technology, underestimating the ingenuity of its prisoners. And that arrogance would be their downfall. As 47 sat on the cot, his mind worked tirelessly. His objective was clear: eliminate Overlord Router. The alien leader's death wouldn't dismantle the Empire overnight, but it would send a message, spark chaos, and give the scattered resistance movements a fighting chance. The challenge wasn't getting to Router. It was getting close enough to make the kill. But that was why 47 had allowed himself to be captured. He was no ordinary assassin. He thrived in the heart of danger, turning the enemy's strength against them. A sudden jolt of pain shot through his wrists. The restraints, embedded with tracking devices and biometrics, tightened slightly, a reminder of the Empire's watchful eye. 47 barely flinched. Pain was a familiar companion, one he had long since learned to ignore. What mattered was the next step, and he had already begun to lay the groundwork. In the far corner of his cell, a tiny, almost imperceptible camera watched his every move. He met its gaze briefly, his expression betraying nothing. Let them watch. Let them believe they had captured a helpless human. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be far too late. Elsewhere in the sprawling capital, Overlord Router stood in his private chamber, a towering figure of alien might. His exosuit, a seamless blend of organic and mechanical components, hummed softly as it sustained his formidable yet fragile body. His glowing eyes narrowed as he reviewed the report from Commander Gorin, a lone human captured on the edge of Empire space. It was an anomaly, perhaps even a nuisance, but nothing more. Still, Router prided himself on his thoroughness. The human would be brought before him in 3 days, during the next session of the Imperial Court. If nothing else, it would serve as entertainment. Back in his cell, Agent 47 leaned against the wall, his eyes closed as if resting. But his mind remained sharp, each passing second bringing him closer to the moment he had planned for. He was a ghost in the machine, an anomaly the Empire could not predict. And when the time came, they would learn the truth. Their greatest strength was no match for a man with nothing to lose and a mission to complete. The hum of the energy barrier softened as the guards began their evening rounds, their movements precise but monotonous. 47 opened his eyes, his gaze steady and unyielding. The Empire had taken the bait. Now, it was his turn to strike. The stillness of the detention center was a calculated illusion. Agent 47 sat on the edge of the cot, his posture relaxed, his gaze seemingly vacant. To any observer, he was a man stripped of options, trapped behind an energy barrier with no hope of escape. But within the assassin's mind, a storm of calculation raged. Every detail mattered. The rhythm of the guards' patrols, the faint flicker in the barrier's field that betrayed a power fluctuation, the soft hum of a ventilation system overhead. This was his element, where patience met precision, where chaos was distilled into opportunity. The guard on duty outside his cell was a bulky, amphibious alien with mottled green skin and a sour disposition. He stood at ease, his weapon slung casually over his shoulder, his eyes occasionally darting to the other cells. The Empire's arrogance was palpable, manifesting in the complacency of its soldiers. To them, the human prisoner was just another insignificant captive. They had no idea they were sharing space with a weapon forged for moments like this. The energy barrier shimmered faintly, and 47 rose from the cot with measured purpose. He paced the confines of his cell, feigning restlessness, his movements carefully choreographed to draw attention without raising alarm. The guard's gaze flicked toward him, suspicion flickering in his dark eyes. 47 stopped, turning his back to the barrier, his hands resting lightly on the wall. The motion was deliberate, calculated. It gave the guard just enough reason to activate the surveillance system, a precautionary measure meant to record any unusual behavior. The surveillance drone descended from the ceiling, a sleek orb of black metal with a single, unblinking lens. It hovered just outside the barrier, scanning him with a faint blue light. This was the moment 47 had anticipated. Hidden beneath the skin of his forearm was a microscopic implant, a marvel of human engineering that the Empire's scanners had overlooked. A subtle flex of his fingers activated the device, releasing a low-frequency pulse that scrambled the drone sensors. The orb froze mid-scan, its lens flickering erratically. The guard cursed in his guttural tongue, stepping closer to inspect the malfunction. In a single, fluid motion, 47 lunged. His arm shot through the shimmering barrier, the implant momentarily neutralizing the energy field. His hand clamped around the guard's neck, pulling him forward with ruthless efficiency. The alien's gurgled protests were silenced as 47 twisted sharply, his enhanced strength snapping the vertebrae with a sickening crunch. The body slumped to the ground, and 47 dragged it into the cell, stripping the guard of his uniform and access card before the barrier reactivated. Donning the stolen armor, 47 adjusted the helmet to conceal his features. The fit was imperfect. Human physiology differed from that of the alien guard, but it was sufficient for his needs. He stepped out of the cell, the access card granting him freedom as the barrier dissolved. The hallway stretched before him, a labyrinth of cold steel and pulsating lights. His neural implant mapped the route to the detention center's central control room, a crucial step in dismantling the Empire's security measures. The corridors were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of machinery. Each step was a careful balance between urgency and stealth. 47 moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, his every motion designed to blend seamlessly into the environment. He passed other guards without incident, their casual salutes and curt nods affirming his disguise. To them, he was just another soldier, another cog in the Empire's unyielding machine. The control room was a hub of activity, its walls lined with monitors displaying surveillance feeds from across the detention center. 3 operators manned the consoles, their attention focused on the streams of data flowing across the screens. 47 entered without hesitation, his helmet concealing the calculated glint in his eyes. He approached the nearest operator, a wiry alien with translucent skin, and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Transfer shift," 47 said, his voice altered by the helmet's modulator to mimic the guttural tones of the alien language. The operator frowned, glancing at the schedule displayed on his monitor. Before he could voice his confusion, 47 struck. His hand moved like lightning, delivering a precise blow to the alien's temple that rendered him unconscious. The other 2 operators barely had time to react before 47 incapacitated them with brutal efficiency. He dragged their bodies into a storage closet, locking the door behind him. With the control room secured, 47 turned his attention to the consoles. His implant interfaced with the system, bypassing its advanced encryption with human ingenuity and sheer determination. The screens flickered as he accessed the detention center's database, locating the files he needed. Overlord Rauter's schedule appeared before him, a meticulous itinerary that revealed the alien leader's movements within Vorthen Prime. The Imperial Court session, set to convene in 2 days, would place Rauter in a vulnerable position, surrounded by his elite guard but within striking distance. As 47 scanned the data, he uncovered something unexpected. The court's security protocols included a neural dampener, a device designed to suppress hostile intent within its radius. The Empire's technology was formidable, but it underestimated the adaptability of a human mind. 47's implant would shield him from the dampener's effects, but the discovery forced him to recalibrate his plan. Precision was paramount. Any misstep would mean certain death. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing louder with each passing second. A patrol was approaching, their routine bringing them dangerously close to the control room. 47 deactivated the monitors and slipped into the shadows, his movements as silent as the grave. The patrol passed without incident, their chatter fading into the distance. He exhaled quietly, his focus unbroken. Leaving the control room, 47 navigated the maze of corridors with practiced ease. His destination was the maintenance sector, a neglected part of the detention center that offered access to the ventilation system. The grates were secured with biometric locks, but the guard's stolen access card provided entry. He climbed into the narrow ducts, the confined space a stark contrast to the sprawling halls he had just traversed. The hum of the ventilation system masked his movements as he crawled toward his target. Emerging in a storage bay, 47 found himself surrounded by crates of alien equipment. He located what he needed quickly: a compact explosive device disguised as a power cell, small enough to go unnoticed but powerful enough to create a significant diversion. He pocketed the device, his mind already calculating its placement. The bay's exterior doors led to the detention center's perimeter, a narrow walkway that overlooked the city below. The sight was breathtaking. Vorthen Prime stretched endlessly, a testament to the Empire's dominance. But 47 had no time for awe. He moved with purpose, his steps as precise as his thoughts. Re-entering the detention center through a side entrance, 47 made his way back to the cell block. The guard rotations had shifted, and his absence had gone unnoticed. He returned to his cell, reactivating the energy barrier and positioning himself as he had been before. The discarded uniform and unconscious guard were hidden, the evidence of his infiltration meticulously erased. As he sat on the cot, the faint smile returned to his lips. Phase 2 was complete. The Empire remained oblivious to the storm brewing within its walls, its arrogance blinding it to the predator in its midst. 47 closed his eyes, his mind already working through the next steps. The Overlord would not see him coming. The vast chamber of the Imperial Court was a spectacle of power and authority. Towering columns carved from obsidian stretched toward the artificial sky, their surfaces etched with glowing runes that pulsed in rhythm with the Empire's heartbeat. Rows of alien dignitaries, generals, and bureaucrats filled the tiered seating that encircled the central dais. Every species in the Empire was represented, their diverse forms unified under the banner of Overlord Rauter. At the center of it all, upon an imposing throne of living metal, sat the Overlord himself. Rauter was a vision of calculated terror. His elongated frame was encased in an exosuit that fused seamlessly with his pale, translucent flesh, giving him an aura of invincibility. Veins of energy coursed through the suit, glowing faintly as if alive. His face, alien and angular, was unreadable, his glowing yellow eyes sweeping over the assembly with quiet menace. He exuded the confidence of one who had crushed entire civilizations underfoot, who believed himself untouchable. The session began with the usual posturing. Reports of conquests, debates over resource allocations, and ceremonial affirmations of loyalty. The air was heavy with formality, a carefully choreographed performance of unity and dominance. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Word of a captured human had spread, a rare event that piqued the curiosity of even the most jaded officials. Whispers passed through the chamber like static electricity, speculation mounting as the proceedings unfolded. The double doors at the far end of the chamber groaned open, and silence fell. Flanked by 2 guards, Agent 47 entered, his wrists bound in glowing restraints. He moved with a deliberate slowness, his expression impassive as countless alien eyes turned to him. To them, he was a curiosity, an anomaly. To him, they were obstacles, irrelevant save for the Overlord seated at the center of the room. The guards marched him to the dais, forcing him to his knees before Rauter. The Overlord regarded him with cold disdain, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate through the chamber. "A human," he said, the word dripping with contempt. "So fragile, so insignificant. And yet, here you are, standing before the might of the Empire. Tell me, what is your purpose?" 47 raised his head slowly, meeting Rauter's gaze. For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. "My purpose," he said, his voice calm, almost conversational, To finish what I started, the Overlord's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. Before he could respond, the chamber's lights flickered and a low hum filled the air. The dignitaries shifted uneasily, their attention drawn to the subtle disruptions rippling through the room. It was then that the first explosion rocked the structure. The blast was precise, surgical, targeting the power conduits beneath the chamber. The lights dimmed, the energy dampeners faltered, and chaos erupted. Guards scrambled to secure the Overlord, their weapons drawn as the dignitaries shouted in confusion. But 47 remained motionless, his calm demeanor unshaken amidst the turmoil. When the second explosion detonated, the restraints on his wrists deactivated. He rose to his feet with the fluidity of a predator, his movements a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding him. The guards nearest to him turned, raising their weapons, but they were too slow. 47 disarmed the first with a swift strike, twisting the weapon into his grasp before dispatching the second with a single, precise shot. The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Ralter rose from his throne, his exosuit flaring to life as it activated its defensive protocols. Energy shields crackled around him, a visible barrier of raw power. "Kill him!" the Overlord roared, his voice amplified by the suit. Guards surged forward, their weapons trained on 47, but he was already in motion. The assassin moved like a shadow, weaving through the onslaught with a lethal grace. Every shot he fired found its mark. Every strike neutralized an opponent. The Overlord's elite guard, renowned for their discipline and skill, fell one by one, their training no match for a man who had turned the art of killing into science. The chamber's once ornate floor was now littered with bodies, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning circuits and flesh. 47 advanced toward the dais, his eyes locked on Ralter. The Overlord's shield flared as he unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one capable of disintegrating a lesser being. But 47 was no ordinary opponent. He used the environment to his advantage, darting between pillars and debris, each movement calculated to exploit the Overlord's limited field of vision. As he closed the distance, Ralter activated the neural dampener embedded in his throne. The device emitted a pulse designed to incapacitate hostile minds, its effect immediate and overwhelming. Most would have collapsed, their thoughts scrambled into incoherence. But 47's neural implant counted the pulse, shielding his mind and allowing him to press forward. The Overlord's expression shifted from confidence to unease. For the first time, he realized that this human was not a prisoner, not a pawn, but a predator. "What are you?" Ralter demanded, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Your reckoning," 47 replied, his tone devoid of emotion. With a final leap, 47 breached the dais. The Overlord swung an arm, the exosuit's enhanced strength propelling a strike that could shatter bone. But 47 anticipated the attack, ducking beneath it and driving a concealed blade into the Overlord's side. The suit's shields flared and sputtered, struggling to compensate for the breach. Ralter staggered, his towering form collapsing to one knee. The chamber fell silent, the remaining guards too stunned to act. 47 stood over the Overlord, his blade poised for the final strike. The Overlord's glowing eyes dimmed as he stared up at his executioner. "You think this will change anything?" he rasped. "The Empire is eternal." 47 tilted his head slightly, considering the statement. Then, without a word, he plunged the blade into Ralter's chest. The Overlord's body convulsed, the energy coursing through his suit sputtering and fading. The light in his eyes extinguished, and the chamber was plunged into an eerie stillness. The assassin stepped back, his gaze sweeping over the stunned dignitaries. "Your empire," he said, his voice cutting through the silence, "is built on fear. And fear dies with its master." Before anyone could react, 47 activated the final explosive device concealed within the dais. The blast shattered the chamber's ceiling, exposing the Capitol skyline. The assassin leapt through the opening, his figure vanishing into the chaos as alarms blared throughout the city. Behind him, The Empire's seat of power lay in ruins, its overlord slain. The galaxy would soon know that even the mightiest could fall. This content may violate our usage policies. Did we get it wrong? Please tell us by giving this response a thumbs down. The capital city of Vorthen Prime burned as chaos spread like wildfire. Smoke billowed into the sky, a blackened testament to the Empire's vulnerability. The streets below teemed with panic as civilians and soldiers alike scrambled for answers. The mighty Empire, so confident in its control, now stood fractured in the wake of its overlord's death. Agent 47 moved through the shadows of the city, an invisible phantom amidst the disorder. The initial explosion in the Imperial Court had given him the cover he needed to disappear into the labyrinth of the capital. The capital's once impenetrable security grid was in disarray, its systems overwhelmed by sabotage and the loss of its central command. Every step he took was deliberate, every action calculated. Escape was not a frantic sprint, but a carefully orchestrated dance. The assassin found refuge in an abandoned industrial complex on the city's outskirts. The facility had been long forgotten, its machinery rusted and its walls scarred by time. It was a stark contrast to the gleaming towers of the Empire, a fitting sanctuary for a man who thrived on the forgotten and overlooked. 47 scanned the horizon through a cracked window, his piercing eyes taking in the chaos below. The city was alive with searchlights and patrol ships, the Empire's forces scrambling to regain control. A faint chirp echoed in his ear, the signal from a hidden communicator embedded beneath his skin. He activated it with a subtle touch to his temple. The voice that came through was calm, measured, and unmistakably human. Mission status? Overlord eliminated, 47 replied, his tone devoid of triumph. The Empire is destabilized. They'll be too preoccupied to retaliate for some time. There was a pause on the other end, the weight of his words sinking in. Acknowledged. Extraction point remains unchanged. You have 20 minutes. Understood? The line went silent, and 47 turned his attention to the next phase of his escape. The industrial complex offered a temporary haven, but it would not protect him for long. The Empire's forces were relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they narrowed their search. He moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, gathering what little supplies he could find. A length of sturdy cable, a discarded fuel cell, and a rusted crowbar. Tools that, in his hands, could be turned into weapons or instruments of escape. The distant hum of engines grew louder, signaling the approach of a patrol ship. 47 slipped into the shadows, his form melding with the darkness. The ship hovered above the complex, its searchlight sweeping the area with mechanical precision. The beam passed inches from his hiding spot, illuminating the jagged edges of broken machinery before moving on. He waited, motionless, as the ship lingered, its crew scanning for any sign of movement. When the patrol ship finally moved on, 47 emerged from the shadows. He climbed to the rooftop of the complex, his movements silent and precise. From his vantage point, he could see the extraction point in the distance, a decrepit docking bay that had once been used for cargo transport. It was isolated, the perfect location for a discreet pickup. But between him and his destination lay a heavily fortified district, its streets teeming with soldiers and surveillance drones. 47 assessed the situation, his mind calculating routes and contingencies. A direct path was out of the question. The Empire's forces would be on high alert, their eyes trained on anything that moved. Instead, he would use the city's underbelly, the network of maintenance tunnels and service passages that crisscrossed beneath the surface. It was a longer route, but it offered the advantage of cover. Descending into the tunnels, 47 was greeted by a maze of narrow passages, their walls slick with condensation and lined with corroded pipes. The air was thick with the smell of decay, a stark reminder of the city's hidden filth. He moved quickly but cautiously, his ears attuned to every sound. The occasional scuttle of vermin echoed through the tunnels, but otherwise they were eerily quiet. The silence was broken by a distant clatter, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots on metal. 47 froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the blade concealed in his sleeve. The Empire's soldiers had anticipated his route, their presence a testament to their adaptability. He pressed himself against the wall, his breath steady as he waited for the patrol to pass. The soldiers moved with discipline, their weapons drawn and their eyes scanning the darkness. They communicated in low voices, their alien language a series of guttural clicks and hisses. 47 waited until they were mere feet away before striking. He moved with blinding speed, his blade finding the throat of the nearest soldier before they could react. The second soldier turned, his weapon raised, but 47 disarmed him with a single, fluid motion. A swift strike to the head rendered the alien unconscious, his body slumping to the ground. 47 dragged the bodies into the shadows, ensuring they would not be found easily. He took a moment to examine their equipment, retrieving a compact energy pistol and a small device that appeared to be a communications jammer. Both would prove useful in the final stretch of his escape. The tunnels eventually opened into an access shaft, its ladder leading to the surface. 47 climbed swiftly, emerging into the ruins of an old marketplace. The extraction point was now within reach, but the final stretch was the most dangerous. Patrols were thick in this area, their searchlights cutting through the darkness like blades. The sound of distant explosions and sirens created a cacophony that masked his movements. He reached the docking bay with minutes to spare. The facility was a ghost of its former self, its landing pads cracked and overgrown with weeds. A single ship waited on the far side, its matte black surface blending seamlessly with the night. As 47 approached, the ship's ramp lowered, revealing a lone pilot clad in a nondescript flight suit. The man gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. Cutting it close, the pilot said as 47 stepped aboard. "Complications," 47 replied, his tone flat. He secured himself in the passenger seat as the ramp closed behind him. The ship lifted off smoothly, its engines emitting a low hum that barely registered against the chaos below. Through the viewport, 47 watched as the city receded into the distance, its lights flickering like dying embers. The Empire's forces swarmed the streets, their movements a futile attempt to restore order. The Overlord's death had shattered more than a regime. It had planted the seed of rebellion in a galaxy long oppressed. As the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, the pilot glanced over his shoulder. "You think they'll recover from this?" "They'll try," 47 said, his gaze fixed on the stars. "But fear is a fragile thing. Once it's gone, it doesn't come back."